Hello, my name is John Burris. Thank you for joining me today for this short video. This video is called Natural Recovery from Addictions, Part 1. This is a 4-part series, and this is the first part of this dynamic series that will explore addictions in detail from a natural perspective. So my experience is I've been a body-mind therapist and body worker for over 40 years, and addictions aren't what we think they are. We've been following a 90-year-old scientific medicalized model that, in my experience, is not only broken, it doesn't really cure anything, or you never really recover for anything. So my model, Natural Recovery from Addictions, takes you through the body, through the mind, and shares with you a new paradigm to explore. And there's new possibilities for you to explore in this new model. So once again, we've been following a 90-year-old model that, in my experience, is broken. It doesn't work, and it hasn't worked, and it's not going to work. So this new model will take you into a deep dive into what an addiction actually is and actually how to cure it. Now, there's work to be done. This is not a magic pill. No one's going to magically get well overnight. There is work to be done. But if we're going in the wrong direction, we can never heal. And my experience is the current addiction model is taking people in the wrong direction and mislabeling something that isn't really what it's supposed to be. So once again, I've been a body-mind therapist and body worker for over 40 years. And that's a lot of where this experience comes from, this new dynamic model based in nature, not in science. You know, we follow this scientific paradigm as if it's God, and science makes mistakes all the time. And my experience, the scientific medicalized model about addictions is wrong, and it's taken us in the wrong direction. So much of this work stems from my 2011 published book called Return to Nature, the 5 Pillars of Healing, where I explore the body-mind connection and give you much greater detail on how to cure addictions and all the idiosyncrasies involved with that. My book is called, once again, Return to Nature, the 5 Pillars of Healing. You can pick it up at my website, johnburris.com, barnesandnoble.com, or amazon.com. It has a wealth of information about the body-mind relationship to addictions. As a disclaimer, I'm not attempting to cure anybody or diagnose anybody with these videos. It's just sharing with you a new model that you may want to reject or you may want to accept. It's up to you, but I want to share with you this new model that's essentially helped me in my life to improve my life, to grow, and to come to my reality. So once again, I'm not trying to cure or diagnose anybody here at all. So the current model started about 90 years ago. It's a scientific medicalized model. The core of the model that's currently used is you're sick, you're diseased, your biology has failed you. You've got a flaw in your biology. It's not your fault. This is a victimization of medicine that happens through the scientific model, that your biology is causing you to drink, to smoke, to overeat, because it's not your fault. It's all about your biology. And yes, biology has something to do with our addictive process, but not very much. So we can't totally rule out biology, but it's not the main component at all. And we're focusing on the wrong parts of the addictions model completely. So the scientific medicalized model based on a flawed biology is completely erred. And I don't agree with that at all. And that's what we've been doing for 90 years. You're taught to believe your body has a flaw in it. You've got a defective gene. You've got a defective family system. You've got something wrong with your hormones, and you can't stop eating, drinking, smoking, whatever. That is a victim scientific model that isn't working, it doesn't work, and it won't work. So my opinion is the recovery model is a multi-billion-dollar industry that doesn't really teach you to recover anything. You're not cured, you're compensated. So the recovery model is a compensation model, not a cure model, because you're not recovering anything. You're putting a Band-Aid on top of basically a third-degree burn. You're never recovering what was lost. So my approach is about recovery. You'll be able to recover and get back to your natural, vibrant self all over again. So my hope for you in this video series is to share with you a model that works based in nature, not in science. And I believe that nature is our greatest healer, not the scientific model. When you think about it, science has been wrong much of our lives. I grew up believing that I couldn't eat butter because butter was evil. I had to live with margarine, and that turned out to be wrong. There's all kinds of ways that science has been wrong in our culture over the last 100 years. So I believe the addiction model based on the scientific methodology that you're flawed, your body is flawed, is a wrong model. And nature is our greatest healing tool. And I'll be sharing with you through this 4-part series why that is and how that's important. Let me first share with you the current scientific, medicalized, victim-based disease model of addiction. So here's the progression, and here's what it looks like. So an event might happen. It can be external or internal. An internal event might mean you have a bad dream, and you wake up and need to go smoke or vape because your dream from the inside created an emotional disturbance, and it caused you to reach for something to medicate yourself. Outside event might be you stuck in traffic, and now you're frustrated and you're feeling out of control. So then you have a reaction, and most people who haven't done a lot of internal work will have an unconscious reaction. You get angry, you scream, you yell, you flip somebody off, and you basically become addictive. You start to, like I said, grab the cigarettes, grab the vape, go hit the bar because you're reacting. So now you have an internal conflict, which is I feel out of control, I feel disempowered, whatever that feeling is that you don't know how to resolve the inner conflict now. So you have a repression. You push the emotions down and you use something to medicate. Grab the chocolate bars, grab the chips, grab something to put in your mouth because you don't know how to deal with frustration and being out of control. So you feel discomfort and pain in your body. Your neck might hurt. Your breathing is shallow. You might have pain in your jaw, your eyes because you're in a stress response. So you choose to medicate. And then you medicate, which is now your addiction. You're medicating the emotion away. And you're blaming the other guy in the other car. It's my gene's fault. It's their fault. It's my boss's fault. He let me out of work late. It's somebody else's fault. And then you start labeling. It's not my fault. I'm an alcoholic. That's what I do. You go back to your scientific medicalized victim model. It's not my fault. So the pattern becomes normalized over time. And that becomes your unconscious pattern. So what does success look like in this model? Success looks like is, well, you accept your condition with no hope or cure. You spend a lifetime of meetings and absence of the perceived cause. You're constantly in blame. It's not your fault. It's the disease's fault. And you're looking for sobriety. And what sobriety means is addiction to control. So with the current medicalized disease victim model, you're blaming your biology on what you're actually creating yourself because you don't have a relationship with your emotions. And those people who choose to work and get help, the ultimate goal is to have a lifetime of going to meetings where you talk about things, you don't really feel them. You're around other people who have the same victim consciousness. And the ultimate goal is sobriety. So let me be clear, I'm not opposed to the model. It's just not a healing model. If sobriety means you can go to work and have a family and have a fairly productive life, I'm okay with that. It's just not healing, because really sobriety means is you're being taught how to become addicted to control. And that's success in the medicalized victim model. You're learning how to be addicted to control. You're getting high off of control. So you're trading one addiction for the other. You're not really curing anything and you're not really recovering anything. But once again, I'm okay with that if that's what gives you a productive life. But it's not healing and it's not recovery. Let me present to you my model now. So here's the model I created about natural recovery from addictions. The learning and practice of emotional intelligence must happen long before you are called to use your emotions. So long before you're stuck in traffic and frustrated, you've got to do your emotional homework before that happens. You can't basically learn to swim when the boat's sinking. So you've got to do your emotional homework way before the emotional events happen. So when they happen, whether you're caught in traffic or you have financial issues or relationship conflicts, you already have the tools ready to use to feel your emotions. When the stock market drops, you instead of going to the bar and having 7 drinks, You start to feel sad. You start to feel your grief. You start to feel your fear. You talk about it, process it, whatnot. When you're stuck in traffic, you learn to unwind from that rather than medicate from it because you've already done the homework. So you're going to have experiences, internal conflicts and external conflicts. And how do you respond to those? How do you let the emotions come out and process the conflict? That's the natural way. So we're responding to an appropriate event. For example, every time I go on a flight, it feels stressful going through airports and flying. The first thing I do, I get back to the hotel, I take a shower, I do some yoga, I do some stretching, and I unwind. You know what most people do? They go out and have a couple drinks, and they want to medicate from the experience, but I unwind from it. There's no blaming, there's no shaming. It's a total accountability package. So when you express and feel your emotions, when you have those events, you're processing the underlying conflict and you're not medicating it. So what does success look like in the natural recovery process? You have full, appropriate emotional expression in a timely manner. For example, if something happens to you at work might not be the best time to scream and rant and rave. You might have to go home and hit a few pillows after you get home. So you have to have a timely response. You're not going to meetings, there's no labels, there's no support groups. You're not blaming your genes, your biology. You are accepting your emotional responsibility. Then you have little to few cravings at all because your emotions are behind the cravings. So even when you slip up, you learn. You just go, well, okay, didn't do so well today, I'll do better tomorrow. And that's the process of taking responsibility and learning from each failure. And so what happens is over time you have a full emotional package where you can feel and process your emotions, get them out of your body, and you have little to no cravings. That's natural recovery from addictions. So here's the model I like to use. Addictions are like a balancing scale here. On one side you have your emotions, on the other side you have your addictions. And what happens is this. If this is the addiction side, it starts to get weighed down because we don't have any emotional intelligence. What happens is this. The people with the most emotional intelligence have the fewest addictions because their emotional intelligence is what's guiding them. What happens is when you have little to no emotional intelligence, all of a sudden, you have no way to process your internal conflicts, which are resulting in the fact that you have many, many addictions. So you see people who are highly addictive. What's happening is they have no emotional intelligence. So their scale tips to their addiction side. It's not about genetics or hereditary or anything in your biology. Is you have no capacity to process your emotions because you haven't worked at it. So what happens is the scale tips in the addiction side and it starts to create a highly addictive person because you cannot process your emotional conflicts. What healing looks like is this. You start to work on your emotions with a therapist or books or workshops. And the more emotional sobriety you have, all of a sudden the fewer addictions you have because it's the emotional conflicts deep inside that are causing you to use things to medicate. If you have emotional intelligence, emotional wisdom, you have far fewer needs to medicate. So it's all about a balancing scale. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that doesn't teach us how to be emotionally vibrant. So we live in a culture that's highly addictive because we don't teach emotions and we suppress them. This is how most people live because they haven't done their emotional homework. And this is the natural recovery is you start to work on your emotional reality, which is over here, and you have far fewer needs for addictions. Right there. So the problem that arises in our culture is we don't value emotional intelligence. We value intellectual intelligence. And so that way we have highly addictive people, highly addictive populations because we've shame people for being emotional. Big boys don't cry, good girls don't get angry. Only weak people express emotions, or the stories we're told all the time. So then we have people who are medicated on their vaping pens, their nicotine, their alcohol, their workaholism, and all kinds of things because we don't have a lot of emotional intelligence. And so the work I've done over 40 years is learn to be emotionally intelligent, and you have far fewer addictions because when your emotional intelligence is high, you don't need to medicate. You don't need to use something to stay high because you process your conflicts and your emotional issues. Emotions are normal. Anger's normal. Anger's about a boundary, yet we don't have any training in how to express anger. Grief is normal. It's about loss. When your dog dies, you're supposed to cry. When your sibling or your parents suffer or die, you're supposed to cry. You know, I didn't learn a lot about emotions from books. I read a lot of books on emotions. There's a lot of them out there. And I've been to a lot of workshops and watched a lot of podcasts and videos, and those are really good starting points. So I recommend that. Even a private therapist is a good starting point. But no one can feel your emotions for you. You have to start doing the work yourself. I learned more about emotions from the 4-year-old having the temper tantrum than I do from the Ivy League professor writing a book on emotions. In fact, all the podcasts and videos I've watched and all the workshops I've been to and all the experts from the Ivy League colleges who've written these books on emotions, I've never seen them express emotion. So it's almost like ironic. When I would teach emotional workshops, emotional yoga, grief workshops, anger workshops, the first thing I do is demonstrate what emotion looked like. I've never seen that in an emotional podcast or an author from an Ivy League college do that. Because what most people do, they intellectually bypass their emotions. They walk around it and they don't really feel it. And they talk about emotions from a distance. And that's what we get. We get people who are highly educated in the intellectual field, but they don't really feel very much because they're intellectually walking around their emotions. I learned more from my emotions from the 8-year-old who's sobbing in the corner because his best friend is leaving and not going to be at school next year. I learned more about emotions from the 14-year-old girl whose mother's suffering with cancer and she's sobbing in the corner. Not from an Ivy League professor who is intellectualizing his emotions. So emotions are real. Learn from children, from animals, whatnot. And emotions are real, and each emotion has a purpose, yet we don't really know much about them. We're all ignorant in how to process our emotions. We have very little intelligence. Part of the problem is, I've been old enough, long enough, so some of you have too. There's been trends in our life. I grew up early on through the Vietnam War movement, the anti-war movement and the war movement, and that was tumultuous. And then I grew up also with the women's movement in the 70s, which was a vibrant awakening. I grew up with the civil rights movement when the cities were burning down. In the 80s, there was something called the men's movement, where men started to get alive with their emotions. They go into the forest and they beat drums and they cry and they connect with their fathers and they became emotional. Guess what happened about 1992? It stopped completely. You know what happened? It was called the tech revolution. The computer took over. And the computer took over and it basically kept us out of our emotional world back into our higher thinking brains. So for the last 35 years or so, we're all like tech nerds, yet we have very little emotional training, very little emotional experience because we went into the tech world the last 35 years. And we lost our ability to feel and to connect with our deep feelings. They're in your body too. When I work as a body worker, people's anger and sadness is in their neck, it's in their shoulders, it's in their chest, it's in their belly, it's in their back. It doesn't go away. It's carried in your body, in the body-mind experience. And we have very little experience because most of us are stuck in our higher cortex because of the computer revolution. We're not very whole people. We've lost our ability to feel. When you can't feel, you're going to have more addictions, as I showed you in the balancing scale. A lot of this issue arises from how we're taught to use our brain. So the cortex is the largest part here. And beneath the cortex is the emotional brain here. And beneath that's the reptilian brain here. The reptilian brain is responsible for our stress response. It's basically very simple survival needs: food, sex, sleep, whatnot. Do I feel safe or not happens here. Threat happens in your reptilian brain. The emotional brain processes our emotions, and this is where everything happens. The last 30 years or more, we're stuck in the cortex up here, the thinking brain. We're thinking addicts. We're not feeling. We're not sensing. We're stuck in our cortex. Once again, a lot of that's because of the training and because of the trend we're in right now is the computer trend, the tech trend. It's keeping us stuck in our cortex, and we're not able to drop down into the other two brains. You can't really heal until you can balance your entire brain. And so that's part of why we're stuck, because we're stuck here. We can't get to the lower two brains. So here's a picture of the three layers of the brain: the cortex, which is the higher thinking brain, the emotional brain, and the reptilian brain at the brainstem. And the problem is the cortex is telling the other brains to shut up. The cortex, the thinking brain is a place that science originates from. And scientific mind, I call it, is telling the emotional brain and the reptilian brain to quiet down, because the scientific brain is terrified of emotions. It's threatened by emotions. It's threatened by the reptilian brain. So it keeps us locked up in our thinking cortex, and it's telling us to keep squashing our emotions. So the scientific mind is part of the problem. Much of our addiction current model actually is because of science. Science is suppressing our emotions because science keeps us locked in the thinking cortex, and it fears emotions. And it keeps telling us how evil emotions are and don't express your emotion. And there's other reasons I'll get to what science has done as well. So science is locked up in the cortex, the higher thinking brain. And so a large part of our addictive reality is due to science. And why would you expect science to try to cure something that science created? So that's the model we're in. It's a model where the scientific thinking brain is suppressing us. Couple of ways while we learn to lose our emotions. We learn, first of all, from our parents. Most parents never learned how to express their own emotions. How can they teach it to their children? So when you grow up in a system of suppressed emotions, you're probably going to take that on yourself unless you decide to work extra hard to get out of that, because our parenting systems don't teach emotional expression. They teach emotional repression. Don't feel that. Don't do that. Don't cry. Don't have a temper tantrum, because parents haven't done their emotional homework as well. The school system is designed to keep you unemotional. You know, over 100 years ago, John D. Rockefeller, who was one of the titans of industry, he started the General Education Fund, which helped direct school systems on what school systems need to be. And it became a memorization regurgitation approach, because we don't want fully feeling people to emerge from school, because that would make bad employees. We want people who graduate from high school and college who are good at following rules and keep their emotions in check and go home and after work and take care of themselves, because we don't want them to have an explosion at work. So the school system is designed to keep you repressed. It started from the titans of industry who did that. And they started a school system of memorization and regurgitation. I never had an emotional class in all my years of high school, grade school, college, and taught me about my emotions. Why not? Because we don't want fully feeling people. We want addicted people, because those are people who go to work well. You know, medical doctors too have been part of this too, because they medicalize addictions and they've suppressed our emotional world. And they keep us medicated. And once again, the whole medicalization of addictions is a model based on a faulty genetic disposition, and that's not true. It's never been found at all. But they keep playing this model for us. Mainstream media, they're always at fault. They're basically promoting this model of disease model and the recovery model, the addiction model, the sobriety model, and let's celebrate sobriety. And they're never really going to answer the important questions, because they're not designed to. They're never going to do that. So the media is also part of this collusion that goes on. And you have government policies, you know, basically keeping us in check and not really, we don't want fully feeling human beings. We want robots to go be productive and do work. You know, people don't realize, you see these courses in high school and college called STEM. science, technology, engineering, math, and people applaud that. Well, I don't. You know why? Because all we're doing is putting out highly intellectual people who have very little emotional intelligence. And the people don't realize this is the education system has been militarized. According to Fritjof Capra in The Turning Point, at least 70% of the engineers graduating from college will end up working for the United States military making weapons because we want to militarize our school system. We don't want fully feeling alive people. We want a militarized school system so we have better thinkers for more military weapons. That's your government policy there. So remember that emotions are full body experiences. A 2-year-old who's not happy they didn't get their favorite breakfast cereal will have a temper tantrum using their arms, their legs, their breathing, their crying. We need to learn, whether you're a child, a teenager, or adult, how to have a functional relationship with all our emotions where we're not hurting somebody else with our emotions. Many people will throw their emotion at somebody else and hurt somebody else. But if you have a fully functional way to release the energy from your body, that's healthy, even as an adult. And here's another interesting part. A lot of times we are taught, or I've been taught, to put calmness on top of our emotions. I've been in and around the spiritual communities for many, many years, and I think it's a fraud because we're taught to be calm all the time, yet your body is suffering. What I've discovered is we put this calmness layer on top, which is a fake because that's not who we really are. I have many people come to me who, lifetime meditators, just got off a 10-day meditation retreat and their neck hurts, their back hurts, their jaw hurts. They're in a state of distress, but they put a layer of calmness on top of that distress because remember, the mind lies, but the body always tells the truth. So I'll have people come onto my massage table and their body's in distress, yet they tell me how calm they are and how relaxed they are, and it's a lie. So emotions are authentic, and you can see it in people's body and expressions when you're real about it. And here's the lie I discovered many years ago in the yoga world. There's a book, a famous book, that's every yoga training I've ever been to, they have the book. It's a mandatory book. Basically, it's called Autobiography of a Yogi. And what it is this. It's by Yogananda, and what he says in the book is that calmness is the ideal state in which we need to express all life's events, and that's a bunch of BS because that's a spiritual lie because your body suffers. So for example, nature's not always calm. There's storms, there's firestorms, there's floods, there's hurricanes, there's lightning. Nature's never calm. Animals aren't always calm. Animals are killing each other all the time. Dolphins kill each other. Whales kill each other. Monkeys kill each other. There's fights all the time. Animals aren't calm all the time. Children aren't always calm. And so why do we expect that we're supposed to be calm all the time? So that's a spiritual lie. What we need to do is have a working relationship with every one of our emotions so we're not harming anybody else, and we can own it and release it because it's bioenergetic. It gets stored in our body. Grief's in our chest and our heart. It causes heart attacks. Anger causes heart attacks. People have tight jaws and tight eyes because they're frustrated, they're angry, they're holding on tightly. So those emotions that don't get expressed outward will go inward and cause havoc in your body. So it's important to have a working relationship with each and every emotion and not cover it up with something called calmness. So let me explain to you my definition of what an addiction is. An addiction is a relationship with a person, object, thought, behavior, or emotion that is used to numb out an uncomfortable feeling or sensation. And once again, here's the balancing scale. It's important to recognize that an addiction is a relationship with something we use to medicate ourselves so we can't feel anything. So once again, it's a relationship, a scale. If you have emotional wisdom on one side and you spend your life working there, you have far fewer addictions, and it's almost non-existent. If you have no emotional intelligence, you're going to have all kinds of horrible addictions to deal with because you have no way of processing your emotions. You're going to be stuck in an addictive cycle your entire life because you haven't done any work over here. Here's where I disagree with the current model. The current model I first explained to you, the scientific medicalized victim model, spends 95% of its effort trying to demonize the thing. Alcohol, evil. Nicotine is evil. Sugar is evil. Let's demonize that. And barely any time over here processing your emotions and teaching you how to feel. So the current model here, the victim scientific model, is about demonizing something. And yes, there is some work done here, but in my opinion, very little. In the current old 90-year-old model, it's about demonizing something, making yourself a victim, and then very little work is actually done here. In my model, 95% of the work is done here, where you learn to process your emotions, and guess what happens? It's a completely different shift. You have no need for addictions because you know how to process your conflicts. So that's the difference in my model compared to the 90-year-old scientific medicalized victim model. They're completely different on what side of the equation you're working. So what have I done for the last 40 years? I've done a lot of private therapy, read a lot of books just to know what's shame look like, what's anger look like, what's a healthy look at anger. So those are good references. I've done a lot of work with therapists, reading books, going to workshops, and retreats, emotional retreats. But here's the important thing. I put myself in places to feel my feelings. For example, if I was scared of going to the ocean, I go jump in the ocean. Or if you're scared to surf, go hire a surfing instructor. If you're scared of heights, go do something like jump out on an airplane. Because what happens is most people fear their emotions. They think the emotion is going to kill them. For example, I was terrified to dance, so I hired a dance instructor and learned to dance. I was terrified to sing because I don't have a great voice, so I hired a singing coach to help me sing. So if you're afraid of your emotions, the way you heal, you've got to confront the emotion and make peace with it. So what I've done over time is spent a lot of time is challenging my emotional reality so my emotions weren't so fearful and I can work with it. They become working. And you have a working relationship with all of them. I had anger issues. I learned to process them and release them. I used to teach anger workshops. I've taught a course called Emotional Yoga where we got the energy out of the body. People report, I haven't felt this good in 20 years after the course because we release the energy of anger from the body. So there are kinds of ways to do this, but you've got to make your emotions important to heal from addictions. And let me share with you what I call the 4 levels of consciousness. This is not mine. I've borrowed this from other people. What is this? The people who are highly addictive are, number 1, they're unconsciously unconscious. They don't even know why they're putting that cigarette in their mouth or that alcohol or whatever. They don't even realize what they're doing is so unconscious. So they're unconsciously unconscious. The second stage of growth is called consciously unconscious. You're very aware of what you're doing. You're saying, I had a really frustrating day. I know I have an issue with alcohol. I'm going to have 2 beers anyways, and I know I'm doing it. But you're consciously aware of what you're doing. The third stage is called consciously conscious, where you have a frustrating day at work and you want to have a drink, but you stop yourself and say, you know what, I'd rather spend 15 minutes here relaxing or sitting in the hot tub or going for a walk, and I'm going to not have that, whatever that addiction is. So you're now consciously conscious as you're making a different choice. And the fourth stage is when you're highly conscious. It's called unconsciously conscious. When you actually walk into a store and you've had tendencies of alcohol in the past and you don't even know there's a liquor department anymore. That never even crosses your mind because you're so emotionally balanced. You don't even know where the liquor stores are anymore. You don't even know where the 7-Elevens are anymore because you're not looking for them. They're out of your consciousness because you're so emotionally balanced. Those are the 4 levels of consciousness that I work with. Essentially, that's the beginning story here, that there are ways to recover. I had addictions in my life and I work with them. And I have far fewer addictions than I've ever had. I'm not perfect and I don't have 0 addictions. I'm willing to admit my faults, but I'm very conscious of what I'm doing and why I'm choosing, and I have a much higher degree of emotional intelligence than ever before. And I'm not a victim of my body. I'm not a victim of a medicalized system where my body has failed me. These are all choices I've made myself. So once again, the current model that most people follow, the 90-year-old scientific medicalized model, the end result is called sobriety. Sobriety is learning to be addicted to control. And once again, I'm okay with that if that's the path you choose. I know it's hard work, but it's not recovery, it's not curing, and it's not healing. It's a compensation model. You have to stay in a cage your whole life to protect yourself from getting out of that cage. You're never really free. You're always protecting yourself from the cage. My model is much more alive, much more vibrant, and it teaches you how to recover following nature's rhythm. So thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned for parts 3, 4, and 5, where I take you much deeper. Part 4, I'll give you more solutions. If you'd like to, once again, check out my book, Return to Nature, it gives you all kinds of ideas about how to heal from addictions from a natural perspective. So thank you for joining me. Please subscribe to this channel for more leading edge videos to come. You can check out my website, johnburros.com, for more leading edge articles and information, and join me there. So thank you for watching today.